guys, welcome to TalkBox with Oktavists. This is your host, Sandra Mahama, and we've got Kale. And please introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Bass2Yang from Kansas City, Missouri.
All right. So, a lot of people, whoops. A lot of people love your subharmonic. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
And most people don't know this, but you have a really, really deep modal voice as well.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. What's a little bit deceptive about me is that I'm a lot shorter than most people, but I don't have. I've noticed a lot of people say that, and I think it's more of like a warmer voice than it is a super deep voice. Like I'm thinking of Eric Holloway, who has a super, a really, really deep voice, or Glenn Miller, but I tend to be like a little bit warmer in that area, but,
Yeah.
but not as deep. So it kind of throws people off a little bit.
Yes. So, starting off, a lot of people asked about choral pieces. So, I know you do a lot of Russian repertoire on your website for not website, your YouTube.
Mhm.
But what type of repertoire do you like doing the most?
Um, you know, I'm I tend to favor Bach cantatas actually because it really
Really?
works. Yeah, it really works. My agility, flexibility in the upper part of my range, and German is really hard for me, and so it's quite a challenge whenever I sing it. It's been a while since I've done it, but I really enjoy Bach cantatas. Um, Besides
I
that,
see.
my favorite I would say is the Rachmaninoff. It's one that I've done quite a bit, and I really like it.
Nice, nice. So, another thing that was asked is there's a lot of questions about what is considered to be a choral bass. So, in your mind, what makes you qualify as a choral bass?
Well, there are a lot of qualifications and also a lot of flexibility in that term. So I'm also a conductor for high school choir, and whenever I look for basses, I basically, if they can sing those low notes and they're comfortable, then I let them sing them. But for the most part, I check, okay, is this comfortable? Is it in their tessitura? Um, where are their natural breaks? What are they doing to their voices when they're singing really low, and what are they doing when they're singing really high? So I take all those into consideration. Choral bass basically is the lowest part in a choral ensemble. So um, I've worked with tenors that can sing some low C's, um, whatever voice they have at that time. And sometimes I just tell them, hey, this is the low C part, so go ahead and jump for it at the very end. and and it's more so for I don't think of it as like a classification by any chance. Did we lose Keo?
Yeah, I think Keo thought he didn't belong, which
Okay.
is unfortunate. But I guess it's just me and you now.
Okay.
All right. The
Yeah.
two Asians. All right. Did you get your shirt, by the way?
No. This is the shirt my wife got me, so it's keeping it low key.
Oh, nice. Did you get
Yeah.
the Matt Spriggs shirt
Yeah.
yet?
Matt said he'll send it whenever he can, so I'm not
Nice.
in any rush. Um,
Yes.
so back to the choral bass.
Yes.
It really depends on how comfortable they are singing down there, um, and I try not to limit my singers, but I also make sure they understand that this is the area that they work best in. I remember working with an eighth grader whose voice changed, and he had like a C3 only, and that's all he had, C3 and maybe a D3, and nothing else above until falsetto kicks in, and nothing else below. So I told him, anytime we sing in the key of C, this is your note, and you're going to sing that note as best as you can. Every other note, you just ghost it and you let it go. And eventually he actually ended up with a low C2, which was really
Wow.
so. I really try to focus on development and then actually putting them in parts. So um, flexibility is the key, and just going with the flow. Sometimes you have to change the composition, but you're not really
Hmm.
adding any parts. You're just really making them sing a different part down the octave.
Yeah. All right. So next up is the question of, so a lot of conductors believe in just modal voice to be considered a bass, but what you are very good at is a vocal extension called subharmonics, which is the next topic we're going to be talking about. Sorry, my mind is blah, blah, blah. So, so we got a couple questions. I believe I sent them to
Mhm.
about subharmonics. The first question and the main question I got was, how in the world do you get your subs so loud?
Yeah, so it's interesting because it doesn't really feel that loud. It feels like it's operating outside of my voice here. So whenever I sing, I try to keep it in that same alignment that I would if I was singing normally. So nothing changes. If I were singing in modal, so my normal voice, the only thing that changes is the addition of that so-called vocal fry, or the addition of that interaction between the two mechanisms, if you want to call them that.
Yeah,
Um, so if I'm singing a normal note, then all I do is I just keep all the formants, I keep everything open, nothing changes, and that little uh, offset that happens in this mechanism occurs, and that takes care of it for the most part. There are different ways. There's so many different forms of subharmonic. That's probably why you hear like, okay, how come this person's subharmonic sounds smooth and this one sounds rattly and this one sounds thin? And
yes,
I think you've touched on this before in some of your videos. Is that it's all about how you control your resonant spaces. I don't want to say
yes.
I don't want to say placement because placement is the end result, but how you get there is this space right here, this pharynx, that
Mm-hmm.
takes care of a lot of that sound, and what you do with it filters out the sound that you want. So for me, I try not to manipulate it too much. I just make sure the interaction happens at that rate that allows me to sing down the octave. And then from there, I keep that, and then I just everything else is the same. The singer's formant is the same. The vowels are slightly modified to darken if I need to, or to brighten if I needed to. And yeah, it sometimes it works really well, and there are times where I fail completely and it doesn't come through, and it's not a problem because the biggest issue I've had with subharmonics not being loud is being too afraid to sing them loud. And so fear is actually, I think that goes across the board, whether you're in modal or not, is that fear is the biggest issue when
All
singing
right.
bass.
You hear that, young bass is Bass2Yang is telling us right now. Fear. That's something we gotta push through. I've noticed for myself. Um, I used to use subharmonics. Um, is that when I use subharmonics, I didn't use them very low because my modal voice is actually high baritone. If you haven't noticed already. But when I used it, I always pushed it into my nasal cavity to create a louder sound. But in the process, I lost the fullness and the deepness if I resonated it more in, is it the larynx area?
Oh, yeah, larynx and the pharynx, yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
So can you explain to us how exactly that works, and what do you think is the perfect balance?
Perfect balance for me is always both bright and dark. That whole idea of chiaroscuro, the bright and
Yeah.
darkness. That's just me. There are times where it can get too dark and times where it can get too bright, and there are certain repertoire that will demand that sound from the bass section. For me, in order for me to get there, there's a trick that Dr. Jeffrey Boers, you, would, I remember attending a seminar a long couple. This would have been like um, 6, 7 years ago, and he would talk to us about this idea of chest, where the chest isn't really a resonating cavity, but to feel like it extends that far in terms of space really helps you open up and helps you align your voice. So you, we all know that we we use the term chest resonance and chest cavity. Um, it doesn't really resonate there. It feels like it's there because that's the sympathetic vibration that happens there. But what really happens is that it's the space right here, your entire pharynx, and then there's three parts to the pharynx. There's the nasal, the oral, and then the laryngeal. And that getting that alignment is what's going to give you that fullness. Because I know a lot of people they focus on placement. It's like, okay, just place it right here, put it all up here,
Yeah.
and that helps with the nasal pharynx. But then, what about your oral pharynx, your mouth, and then
Ah.
your laryngeal pharynx? So what happens is they place it all up there, and then they for this part right here at the bottom becomes like this because now they're trying to place the sound up there. But what really happens, what you should really do is just open up and then allow it to resonate all the way through. One
You,
trick
you,
that one trick that Dr. Boer showed us is pretend like you have something in front of you and you're just opening it up, and you kind of hum through it. So hmm, hmm. So anytime you go notice how the pitch goes up and the sound moves through your entire vocal tract. Mm, mm, mm.
mm,
Yep.
mm,
So, and so you just
mm,
so you pull that you pull that
mm,
like that.
mm.
Yeah,
Mine's
and
a
so
lot higher than yours,
yeah,
but
so so even higher, it works really well too. So
yeah,
and that just allows you to feel okay, where is it happening and where is it ringing, and to me it helps me. It may not help someone else. I the term placement is very tricky because there are some people where just place it right here and boom they get it, and I'm like, all right, that's it, we don't need to talk anymore, I don't want to mess with you. and and there are other people where I have to fully explain. I say, okay, well, you got to breathe like this, you got to make sure this is open. So it all depends on who you talk to. um
yeah, for
yep.
sure. The next question we got is I got it from a lot of young bases,
Sure.
and it's how do you make subs not break?
Yeah, that one is a little more crazy. So the reason why it does break is because the rate of that interaction is just it falls apart. So let's say if you're singing a note, I'll try A flat. That's usually okay. Oh, so my interaction needs to be at a consistent rate to allow the waveform to imitate the octave below. So, oh, so anytime it falls apart, it means that my larynx either got in the way, my vibrato, so no one talks about that, but my vibrato gets in the way because the vibrato also changes the pitch slightly. So
Interesting.
the rate of my vibrato can get in the way, and also the connection between that note, the perception, the connected perception of that note. So let's say if this is an A, so if this is an A2 and an A1 is like this, is this far, is this entire arm. Well, my interaction needs to make sure it doesn't fall in between, because if it falls in between, that's when it breaks. It needs to make that a complete oscillation. So it so the real question, which is how do you control it? It takes a little bit of time. You do have to make sure your vocal folds come together. One thing that helps me bring everything together is this right here. So I use a straw whenever I sing. So this is a straw, and
Okay.
it has a little thing right here. So this is how far I put it here, and I just sing through the straw. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
And it allows me to actually focus on pharyngeal space and nothing else. So this right here, it goes directly to here, and then it actually focuses my sound a little bit too. And
Interesting.
it forces me to narrow completely, but it also allows me to open up. So because if I try to do it without a mechanism, it's a little bit harder to grab
Yeah.
vocally. But if I have something that forces me to do that, then it doesn't break. And if it does, it'll break and then it'll pull back together. Because funny thing is, I, I'm that guy. I don't have perfect pitch, but I love figuring out what pitch is. So this is about that's about an A flat. And so singing through an A flat through here actually helps me figure out, helps me bring that pitch together as well. And some people are like, okay, dude, you're a total nerd, but that's just me. You know, I like doing that. So finding find a straw and sing through it, breathe through it, because when you breathe through it, it also allows you to focus less on trying to make a sound and more about the mechanism itself. So
Nice.
yeah, to answer that, all that, the secret to controlling subharmonics, sing through a straw. It helps a lot. Keep it narrow, keep it very thin, very bright, and then add the space when you're ready.
Nice. I think I have never heard that. I'm blown away. The secret to subharmonic control is a straw.
Yeah, and it's funny because straw bass, falls into that too. It doesn't mean the same thing, but it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting how that there's some sort of a
Yeah,
parallel there.
which leads us to our next topic: straw bass. After subharmonics, sorry, I have a slight lag, so I hear my voice twice.
Yeah,
It's kind of annoying. So I'm trying to speak twice. Anyways, straw bass. This was actually the second most asked question besides subharmonics. It's because, okay, there's a lot of stigma and what is it? Is it DVM? Is it vocal fry? Is it undertone singing? What exactly is straw bass? So you've made a couple videos, but please go ahead and tell us.
sure. So, like I said, this is one of those topics where it's like, okay, we're probably not going to see it the same way, and so rather than trying to see it the same way, I try to look for the physical mechanism itself, and then from there, expand my meaning. So
Yeah.
how I feel straw bass is or Strobas if for the German um, is it's the brightest and thinnest part of your vocal folds where you're still holding on to it as in still in full voice, and it's kind of like the ends justify the means, where you are singing very bright and very controlled and almost borderline forceful in a sense, but
Yes.
it's enough to
One
where
second.
yeah.
I just realized. Never mind. I thought the window was over.
Okay. Yeah. So it's to where it's so bright, and I'm talking about the extreme side. It's where it's so bright and so there's no vibrato, but you haven't given up the musculature that you would in your modal voice. It's kind of hard for me to demonstrate because I've only recently encountered it, and I've realized that I do it. And a lot of basses do it when they get toward the end of their range, and it's just that it's the same concept of keeping the buzz in your voice, making sure it stays bright. Don't sing so dark. Keep it forward. All that term, it revolves around that straw bass idea. There are some people that say straw bass is vocal fry, and then they just leave it at that. And there's nothing different. It's your vocal fry. The reason why my definition is a little different is because vocal fry doesn't have the complete musculature. It just allows your voice when you sing vocal fry, your vocal folds become really thick and very slack, and they just allow puffs of air to go through, and there's no stretch of from the other muscle. And what that does is that pulse, now you don't have to worry about the length of your fold. You just have to make sure the pulse matches the pitch. So 65 pulses, that's a low C2. Um, 55 pulses, that's an A1. You just control the rate. That's why you hear that clicking sound
Yeah.
in vocal fry. And it's hard for me to demonstrate because I've I try not to. I dabble in it once in a while just to make sure that okay,
Mhm.
let's check the mechanism. Let's make sure we know what we're talking about. And so there's that stigma as well. And you said it already earlier that the stigma of Storobas. Okay, oh, it's not full voice. Oh, it's vocal fry, or it is full voice. It's just really thin, or it's this, or it's that. Um, Whatever it is, there is a pitch. Whenever I hear people talk about Storobas, there is a pitch, a noticeable pitch. It is very bright. And there is no vibrato. I haven't really heard any vibrato, and it's absent of some pharyngeal resonance. So it sounds really
Interesting.
thin. So if I were to sing in E flat, that's just normal. That's like right around my speaking voice. So if I narrow that down, uh, it's a vowel difference for some people. For me,
Yeah.
it feels like I'm squeezing my pharynx to allow me to project all my sound up. And sometimes it works, sometimes it cuts off the air because I push too far. And so I think that's where a lot of times some pedagogues they will say that it can be dangerous because some people do push it too far or they use too much vocal fry and they try to carry it up in their voice. And so
Yeah.
it's all over the place. And I'm sorry if I'm not clear, but what I
No, no, it's fine. In
yeah
fact, I love what you said. It really helped me out. And um, interestingly enough, your version of strobe bass sounded it was higher because it's an E2, right?
around there.
Kurt Moll's C2 in one of the operatic pieces. He uses strobe bass. The you can hear the difference. It's a little, I say, muffled sounding.
Mhm.
Exact. Is that make sense to you?
Yeah, and it does make sense because there's also varying degrees of Strobos to where you can use it to find you can like for me I use it to find my lower notes because it's
Mhm.
very narrow and it's easy to bring my folds together.
Yeah.
um, and eventually once I get that I can slowly open up that pharynx again and then allow that to fill the sound. And so a lot of your operatic counterparts and choral singers, singers in general,
Mhm.
they do that naturally and they find that brightness and they try not to lose that idea of dark and bright. And some singers they do really well. Kurt Moll does an amazing job, and his voice is seamless. So I mean, you can call it all modal, and you can call it technique or whatever you want. But whatever it is, he has that low C, and there's no doubt about that. That's so
Totally get
that's my take on it, and that's just how I roll.
it. Nice. All
Yeah.
right. Next topic is a technique that we really don't know about. And I just learned about it recently, and that's what I use.
Mhm.
Uh, VVM, vocal ventricular phonation,
Mhm.
or something like that.
Yeah, ventricular folds. Yep. So the
Yes,
false fold phonation is
yes. So one of the interesting thing. Sorry, I keep getting lag. So one of the most interesting things is I'm so sorry to
that's okay.
Yang is when you listen to some Oktavists pieces, you will hear a fundamental above the bass note. One of the best examples I've heard is Pasukov's chant in the cherubic hymn, where he sings the chant for about 40 seconds long. It's about a B1. But if you listen closely, you can hear a fundamental above the B1. I'm sure you've heard it before, have you?
Yeah, I have, and so it's interesting. I tried. it's funny you bring up that piece because it takes me back to when I really, really first started, and so I can see where the conclusion occurs as well. Um, I heard this on like a weird website where those old websites where it just has text and a colorful black background,
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
free website. I don't even remember where it is now. I think it's probably still there, but it showed that clip where he sings the B1, and I'm like, gosh, I've never heard this before. This is the first time I've heard a true Russian profundo, a true Russian octavist. And
yeah,
so I'm listening, I'm listening. How do you get that? What's with all these overtones? What's going on? And so I kept on looking through my voice, and it turns out that was my first experience of subharmonic. And I've noticed that what we try to do as singers is we try to emulate sounds because that's just how we are by nature. Look
yeah,
at any kid, any child. When you say something, they'll try to say something back the same way you do, and the best to the best of their ability. And so, um, to the best of my ability was okay. I need to figure something out because I can't push my voice all the way down to a B1. I can't do that. That just
yeah,
doesn't feel right. And eventually, I practice, and it just my voice popped up the octave and like, okay, what's going on here? What is this? Why does it feel so easy singing
yeah,
it this way? Um, I so in my experience, I can tell a little bit more now. It's still hard for me, but I can tell a little bit more now when subharmonics happen and when it's modal.
hmm,
And I don't I don't really feel that this undertone singing happens um, across the board. Not everyone has that, and sometimes people do have those low notes and they
yeah,
don't use anything or they don't
yeah,
know if they're using it. So
yeah,
the only thing I can say is that something is happening that's allowing them to be vertically aligned that doesn't give up any of the resonant spaces. And for me, the subharmonics allowed me to do that. And I'd rather sing it like the way I can than try to force my way through. And
yeah,
because there's no way I can project a B1 like that. I
yeah,
can sing a B1, but I can't project it in that manner.
yeah. But you do know what I'm talking about. Where when I remember the first time I heard the Bass2Yang recording, I said, "Oh my goodness, wow, what a chest modal voice."
Right, right.
But when I listened to the recording without headphones and I actually listened to it with my phone, I noticed there was a note an octave higher that was very apparent now.
Yeah, and I it is interesting because I can't say for sure unless I meet him in person, shake his hand, and sing next to him. So that's and so for me, I've always felt that it was modal all the way through, and given his history and and his ensemble, I feel that way. Um, the way how I can match his sound is through subharmonic only, and so I do know what you're saying. That upper octave is really strong, and so I can't give you a definite answer
That's
unless I'm
okay.
thinking.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So the next person we're talking about is Alex Lukianov.
Mhm.
And if you've seen videos of the man, it's insane. He's projecting all the way. Whoops. So sorry. So this is the first time I've ever done an interview. That was my phone alarm to tell me, "Hey Xander, it's
Not a problem.
sorry, I'm so sorry." Anyways, Alex Lukian, he can project all the way down to a D1 over a choir of Russian men.
Yep.
And yet, when you hear his speaking voice, it's actually higher than yours.
Yeah. So it's the mechanism is an amazing thing. We I I think I remember talking with Benjamin Kramer, I believe is his last name.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he and I we talked quite a bit, and we're also coming to the conclusion is that okay, our vocal fold length, there's no way possible for us to truly sing because you know, let me see, a C1, the length of a C1 is what, 16 feet or
Yeah.
no, 32 feet. Was that? It was one of those. No, I think it's 32 feet. The length of a
Okay.
C1 is 32 feet
Yeah.
for a pipe organ. And so in order for us to truly sing a C1, we have to have at least 32 feet of tubing. And we don't have that.
Yeah.
So what we do is we find our voices find we can we can sing the C1 or the C2, but it's not loud enough. Like a C2, that's about as loud as I get.
Yeah.
And that's me pushing everything down. There's no overtones. There's nothing. So the C2 won't project on the mic, maybe. But I I feel like a lot of these singers they have such a seamless connection and they practice it so long, and that whether or not they're whatever voice they're in, what I do know for certain, and so I'll tell you what I know for certain instead of making guesses, is that they are vocally aligned and that there's no compromise. Nothing is getting in the way of that pitch. Because if you look at vocal fry will take care of the pitch. But if your pharynx opens up and allows you to reinforce that pitch, then that'll give you that projection that you need. And even in subharmonics, a D1 is really hard. And you're thinking, okay, well, you're singing down the octave, so why is it so hard? Well, it's because the pitch that's being created doesn't support the mechanism. Like the mechanism can't support it because there's just so much. It's just so far off. Like
Fascinating.
the pharynx resonates a lot further. So that D1 that you hear, I mean, it's powerful. Like that's without a doubt.
Oh
But
yeah.
without the other basses singing the D2 or the other basses singing the A2, it may not. It'll probably be somewhat lackluster, not as powerful as we feel.
Wow. Interesting.
So, yeah, Lukianov, amazing singer and so consistent and such a powerful sound. I the only thing I can think of is that he found his mechanism. He found an efficient way to not push his voice down, but keep it fresh. Pavarotti says, keeping your vocal folds fresh and
Yes.
centered and not leveled and not pressed down or raised. And for basses, I think that's the secret sauce is making sure the vocal folds are fresh and not pulled down one way or pushed down or squeezed another way. And
Yes.
all this fluff that we try to do is we try to do so much that we forget the vocal freedom that we're supposed to have down there. And I feel like Lukianov does an amazing job finding that vocal freedom. I would change my technique to his in a heartbeat.
Yeah. His technique is flawless. Um, Speaking of which, my fan base is wondering if you could tell me what exactly the heck is Xander doing? Because in his recordings, it sounds so massive. Like, yeah, he's in a choir of about 30 kids. And there's a video on YouTube of him hitting a C2, and it just sounds like a lion's roar. And then when he posts his YouTube videos, he sounds like this.
Yeah, to me, that means that you found a, and we talked about this a little bit briefly, and that your technique is katakata related, in that it's not pressed, but it's actually opened, and it's that full sound, whatever you want to call it, that pharynx that you have open, and also the projection that you have in the not the nasal resonance, but really the larynx. You don't compromise this, and I think that's where a lot of people fail is that when they involve their false folds, what happens is the false folds are here and the true folds are here. They press down on it, and then they lose that laryngeal resonance, and that also affects the pharyngeal resonance, which filters the sound. And for you, somehow This is just what I hear. I don't know if it's. I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you what I can't tell you that I've scoped you and I see what's going on. But what I hear that's happening is that the true folds and the false folds are meeting in equilibrium, and the pharynx is not compromised, which is why it sounds so full. And then because the pharynx isn't compromised, the larynx is allowed to resonate with that singer's formant, and that is what lives above all the rest of the choir. And so the choir typically any bass, no matter how good you are, for the most part, choirs will be singing like a mezzo piano to pianissimo when the bass is down below the bass staff for balance purposes. That's just good. That's good conducting. That's good technique.
Yeah,
That's good choral sound. And so, excuse me. So for you, that's C2. It almost sounds like it's like all of a sudden, choir singing, we're singing this note, and all of a sudden, boom, you're in the forefront. And so that's that singer's formant. That's not you pushing your voice, because what happens
yeah,
is we think that if we push more air through, we can push sound. It's like no sound. There's no moving air right now in this room, but sound is happening because sound is based on vibrating items.
yeah.
And what you're doing is you're vibrating this at the sound that it's supposed to, and it reaches their ears at the sound that it's supposed to. So that C2 that you sing, which is really great, by the way. And balance is amazing. Vowel is great. That C2 is packaged in such a way that it centers everyone to it, and then now everyone else's voice, soprano, alto, tenor, and baritones, that just reinforces the sound. So now it's kind of like lighting, right? So I have lighting,
Yeah.
and it would be like I have all these lights now just on me, even though the lights are giving me different frequencies. The focus is now on the fundamental, which is why singing, the pyramid of sound. That's so important.
Yeah.
And but if they're wondering why, that's why it don't. And you could tell me if I'm wrong. You probably don't even feel like you're singing that much louder than anybody else.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, when I sing in the choir, it's funny. I'll hit the C2, and it feels as if I'm actually balanced and the same volume as the bass 2 next to me, who's hitting it with modal. However, when I hear the recording, all you hear is me,
Right.
and you can't hear the modal voice of my bass 2 next to me, which is my dad always makes fun of me. He says it's all about balance. You should be blending with your other bass 2. And then I say, that's nice. The only problem is he's not projecting enough. If I tried to blend with him, it wouldn't be heard at all.
Right. Right. And that's the beauty of choir is that the blend the blend happens. So this is my philosophy. The blend happens whether or not you like it. And so we sometimes choir directors we get in this mindset where we have okay, basses have to be soft and warm, baritones have to be very thin, and this tenors have to be nice and light, and sopranos very light on top, altos very very deep and wide, and get that middle ground sound. So it's like we shape our sounds so much that we forget um, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes we forget the vocal freedom that our singers really do have. And so I also do a little bit of audio engineering on the side. So I have some tech. My brain goes into tech mode whenever I'm working with singers. It's like, rather than having you, Xander, and this dark bass, rather than telling you to match him, why don't I just equalize you as one bass? As opposed to trying to say, okay, well, Xander, you're singing too bright, match your section. It's like, no, his EQ is different than that other bass's EQ. So rather than trying that, I just need to place them in the choir where it sounds best. And I'm guessing where they place you most likely will be either to the furthest right or center,
That is,
depending on
that is
where.
great. That's exactly where they place me. He
Yeah.
always placed me on the far right in the back.
Mhm. And that's right as in like, well, I'm using my left hand right now, but wherever the basses are, it's you're usually the most outer voice, or you're the most inner voice.
Yes.
But, yeah, and that's for that's for balance purposes, because frequency works a certain way, and those higher frequencies that you have that allows you to project, that actually takes on the form of the bass section. So that's why you can hear yourself so powerful, is because the other basses are supporting you. Don't get me wrong; they
Yeah.
are there. You can feel them.
Oh yeah.
But the reason why your voice is in the forefront is because you have the singers. You've kept the singer's format. Your vocal alignment is there, and that allows you to go through. I apologize, everybody. I'm from California, and I talk really fast. So if it feels that way, I'll try to slow down a little bit. It's just I get really excited about these topics too. So
Yeah, no, really fun. I've always wanted to talk with you. I remember, and this is some fanboying right now. I remember way back in 2016,
2016.
I saw this video of this guy singing really low, and he was Asian. How many Asians can sing low? Well, here in America, not that many. In fact, in our cultures, it's not really taught to be low singers. If I'm not mistaken, if it's not the same for Filipinos, it's sing high or else it's not singing. I don't know how it is for your culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm Hmong, and it's a pitched based language, so it's close. It's not mutually intelligible with Mandarin or Cantonese, but it's kind of like an offshoot of China. There's a whole history behind it, but I
Yeah.
don't want to get into that. But it's true, because there is actually an absolute pitch that we speak in, um, and I think it's not even octave based. So like if I take it on the octave, it would mean something else from what I understand. But so I have to stay in that upper octave, that speaking octave, where it lives. And it's interesting. There's a couple of studies that even some of the people on the Octavism site are doing regarding how language influences pitch, and how language also influence the manner of speaking. Um, yeah, here in the United States, I feel like we try to mirror a lot of what European choirs do,
Yeah.
and we try to get that sound, that boy choir sound for the sopranos, and that warm velvet alto tenor sound, and then the supportive bass sound, but then never that just full Russian release low end. Um,
Yes.
and I mean, I love all sorts of music, and there's something about what Russian choirs do, and just any choir, Estonian choirs, whatever choirs in the East, whatever they're doing something right, in that they're not only maintaining their culture, but they're maintaining this sound, this idea of a cappella that just resonates with people.
Yes.
If you've ever gone to like honor choirs, and you see these national choirs coming through, or like at ACDA, I mean, it's amazing what they do, and it's like, wow, for me, that doesn't sound like it's healthy, but why does it feel so good? Why does it feel so right? Because
Yes.
and
Like the Twinkie.
yeah, and so for me, I try to keep all of that in that same area, in that operating area.
Yes. 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 All right. So the next question is, everyone wants to know, um, Octavism. What is Octavism? What makes you an Octavist? And do you, Tu Yang, claim to be Octavist?
What was the last part?
Do you think you are Octavist?
Well, okay, so let me answer one piece at a time. So octavism is anything if you want to be like if you want to talk about what we do at the Octavism forum and at Facebook, it's anything that's below the base staff. So anything, we've have like instruments below the bass staff, voices below the bass staff, women voices below the bass staff. Um, it's anything that is in that band of frequencies that is bass. And so it can be voice, it can be instrument, it can be animals, it can be anything. And we get a lot of we have a lot of fun on the forum and on Facebook. I'm sure you know. Uh,
Yes.
so in terms of choral music, octavism is any bass that sings the octave below the normal bass part. It can be a G1, it could be a C2, it could be even a D2. It just depends on the repertoire. And what an octavist serves is we serve as an 8 VB instrument. So we do things down the octave to either support the undertone, support the choir, reinforce the overtones by singing the octave below, to reinforce strength, and to also assist with cadential points. So either the 5-1, 4-1, or on the one, or deceptive cadence, wherever you want to go. It's the octavist supports that sound and allows the listener to move with that sound and to be fully fulfilled because there are no instruments. So the octavist takes that role of the organ, takes that role of bass.
Yeah.
Um, there's actually a really there's if you look into music history and you look at what organists do and what even what singers do and what how music moves is that 5-1 or 4-1 cadence. Those cadences also depend on that octave to really be fulfilling. And so
Yes.
you'll sometimes hear a church organist, you'll sometimes hear them reinforce the lower octaves with pedal tones with their
Yes.
pedal,
Yes.
and that's just to give it that overall sound. And the octavist fulfills that role because the instruments weren't allowed, and you needed a little, you needed more aural fulfillment. It just wasn't pleasing to hear a basic 1-3-5 chord and the bass up the octave, but it was that those tones that 1-3-5 is fully reinforced when you have an octave down. So it makes sense physically, physics wise. It also makes sense. And then for
Yeah.
us, us, we just love the octave down. So
So then now, are you an octavist?
I function as an octavist. So I'm very weary of classification because I put myself in boxes to show how I fit. I'm kind of so like okay, in a choir, I do function as an octavist, but I do also function as a bass too, and then I function as a baritone soloist. I function as a bass baritone in operas. I probably would not qualify as a basso profundo in opera because one, when you know when you're singing like that, you don't have that color in your voice, you're going to be written off. And it's like, okay, you're not for that role. Why are you doing it? You don't have the
Yeah.
demeanor, you don't have the body shape, you don't have the force, you don't have the voice for it. You have the range for it, but you don't have the color for it. So
Yeah.
that doesn't work. That's why I tend to, basso profundo is an operatic classification, and that's not me. I'm like a basso cantante or a basso cantabile. Like
Yeah.
I'm a low bass. I can do some bass baritone stuff. I'm a lyric bass. I don't do any dramatic roles. I don't do any beautiful roles. And opera, I love opera, but I don't sing opera full time like some other people do. And they do such an amazing job. I leave that to them. In choirs, I function as bass 2, bass 3, octavist. I just I really am just a bass. Like that's who I am. I'm a bass baritone when you need me to be. I'm a functional baritone. Maybe if you need me up there, you probably don't want me up there any higher than that. But what's great about what I've learned about myself is that because I do have a lyric sound, and because I do practice um, a lot of ensembles, like different ensembles, different styles,
Yes.
I blend in very well with a lot of things. I've sung in some barbershop stuff. I've done in some vocal jazz stuff. I've done everything there is, with the exception of heavy metal, which may be something to look into eventually. Um, Rap, yep, I've done it. Um, it's amazing to see what the demand for bass is, and what's great about our voices is that we will probably most likely function as bass and even as an octavist depending on what we need. So long story short, I am not a basso profundo, but I do sing the octavist lines.
Nice. And so this is just for the Discord group. They're asking you right now, is Xander octavist level? I don't think so yet.
Yeah, I would say so because we get so caught up in being all modal. It's like no, if you're all modal, then you disconnect yourself from all the other resonances. Modal is just a term that says this is your voice. This is your voice, and your vocal folds are functioning as they normally should when you speak. Okay, but when it comes to art and when it comes to perspective and intention, yeah, you totally function as an octavist. I would totally hire you in my group for that sound. I mean, I'd hire everybody on the octavism forum Facebook because that would be like the best bass uh, bass section plus, and then there's other singers there too that
Yes.
fill the entire thing, and it would be an amazing sound because the reason why it would be amazing is because we love what we do. And if you love singing down the octave, sing it down the octave and do it great. And people will either pick you apart or they will give you praises. But either way, they can't deny that that sound is there. So that's how I see it, and that's how I always look at things.
Nice. So here at the TalkBox, you're the first person. So here's how it's been a great interview. I appreciate that you took the time to talk with me and Keo at the beginning.
Yeah.
So here's how we're gonna end every single interview is,
Okay.
and this is just because we're basses and we love this.
Sure. Sure.
What's your lowest note?
Lowest note. So do we go through other like
Nope.
anything?
Just give us the earthquake.
Oh, as in sing the lowest note?
Yes, yes.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can do. Um, so it won't be a lowest note, but it'll be a low note. How about that?
Yes, no, go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, so
Wow.
maybe a G, and then yeah, I mean I've been messing with ingressive fry as well, just for fun.
Oh, yeah.
And because it does help you keep your voice. You know, it lowers your larynx and keeps the pharynx open. And it's funny. It's fun to do because you know you get so low that you can hear all the clicks. And
Yeah.
then, so I'd put it in Audacity and I slow it down. I EQ it and I put everything. It's like, oh, that's about 11 hertz. That's really low. That doesn't exist and it's not musical, but it's there. So
Yeah,
I, I avoid that. G1. That's kind of
G1.
scratchy too right now.
All
That's
right.
fun for me.
Thanks, Tao Yang. Shoot, Tu Yang.
Yeah,
Ah!
not a problem. Thou is it's just the way it looks. It's not a problem. Two is what they call me. That's what I grew up with, and it fits because I had a friend named Two that sang tenor, so he was tenor two, and I was bass two.
All right. So we're going to end the interview here. But if you want to keep talking to me, that's awesome. If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want.
Yeah, that's fine. Then we can just thank everyone else. I guess whoever's on the Discord and doing their thing. Thank you. Um, Facebook activism. You guys are awesome, like always.
All right. So the next person that we're going to interview, the choice is yours. So, Bass2Yang,
Sure.
between the choices of Jason Thoms, Glenn Miller, Matt Spriggs, Eric Holloway, which one should we interview next?
So I'm I've always been a big fan of Eric Holloway. That's just me. I'm sure if he's listening right now, so he knows that already. Follow
Yeah.
him everywhere, and the things he does, I try to emulate. Such a humble man and a man of God. And so, if you can interview Eric Holloway, that'd be awesome. Any one of them would be fine, but Eric, you're my man, dude.
All right. You heard it here from here first, folks. Eric Holloway is next. And by the way, he just messaged me that he's down. So it's gonna happen.
Awesome, great,
All right.
great.
So thanks guys for watching. Me and two are gonna keep talking because this is fun. But see you guys.
All right, we'll see you.